Hello everyone, Giltar here with a Transformers action figure review. This time we'll be looking at the Generations figure of War for Cybertron Optimus Prime. Now this is a toy that was released just a couple of months ago, depending on where you were at in the world. In the United States, I believe it was released during the early part of summer. Normally it retails for $10 to $15 depending on where you're at. And if you're in Canada, deluxe class figures like War for Cybertron Optimus Prime will normally be priced at $15 at most stores, whereas in the United States you're usually looking at about a $10 price point for figures normally. Now War for Cybertron Optimus Prime here, the design is from the War for Cybertron video game, in which it depicts the story of the Transformers in the time period before they came to Earth. So all of their Cybertronian or native forms are somewhat, I guess, alien in design. For example, here this Cybertronic or Cybertronian armored truck design is pretty interesting. I do like the look of it. Even though it's a little alien in terms of its design, it really does, at a glance, remind most people of Optimus Prime, with the color scheme of red, blue, and silver and black. There's no yellow or gold that we would see a little bit of in the Generation 1 or G1 Optimus Prime. But aside from that, most people who are familiar with Transformers and familiar with Optimus Prime, when they look at this vehicle form, most people will probably guess that this is another sort of variation of the character of Optimus Prime. I really do like the design. It looks pretty nice from all angles that you would normally view it from. It does kind of remind me of the War Within Optimus Prime design from the, I believe, Dreamwave comic book series. The reason being is that in vehicle mode, just the placement of the smokestacks here, or the exhaust pipes here, are kind of similar to the War Within Optimus Prime design, and just the general layout of the front section of the sort of armored truck vehicle form does remind me a little bit of the War Within Optimus Prime design. And you'll see another element in robot form, or humanoid robot form, that I'll point out that again reminds me of the War Within Optimus Prime design. Now the rear portion of the truck houses the gun or the rifle of the character. It actually has kind of a spring-loaded gimmick. This is its storage form, but if you sort of flip up this magazine here, it sort of springs out the rear section or the stock of the rifle, and then you have the full rifle form. It does have a couple of pegs here, one on the bottom as a normal gripper handle and one on the side that you can use for alternative posing of the rifle in robot form. But let's put this aside for now. And yeah, once again, I really do like the look of the alternate form, the vehicle form of the toy. However, at the bottom we do see some issues with some obvious robot parts or kibble. We also see Optimus Prime's face staring right out at us. But aside from that, it's a really good, solid vehicle form. So let's get into the transformation, and before we do that, I'm just going to elevate my camera so we can get a better look at it. Now, as I've said in the past, or my previous reviews of Transformers figures, I'm going to go through the transformation, but by no means is this an instructional sort of portion of my review. I'm just transforming it as I would transform it. So let's just start it off. So I just would begin by flipping up the hood portion and separating it from the body. Next, what could we do? I guess I could separate these panels here in the front that connect to the bumper, which just peg in. It's a really nice, interesting design here. I'm going to say this right now, the transformation design of War for Cybertron Optimus Prime is really fun in my opinion. On the box, the packaging of the figure, it actually states that this is a level 4 transforming difficulty figure. Out of a scale of 5, the difficulty for this transformation is rated at 4, which is supposed to be more advanced. And the good thing about this design, in my opinion, is that it is complex, but it's not complicated. There's a lot going on during the transformation, but it's not like sort of needlessly difficult or complicated without reason. As I said a moment ago, there is complexity in this transformation, but all for good reason. It's a very, very involved transformation. There's a lot of depth to it, but it is satisfying. If you enjoy transformation designs, you're going to enjoy War for Cybertron Optimus Prime. It's a really interesting action figure in that respect. Now, there's a lot of sort of unfolding of parts, unhinging of parts, extending of the lower legs, and folding things out. It really does remind me in a way of sort of a mix of the Generation 1 Transformers aesthetics, because it is sort of a blockier, chunkier design, but the sort of more complicated transformation design, to me at least, really comes off more sort of inspired by the Michael Bay live-action movies of Transformers, with the more overtly mechanical elements, the more sort of complicated transformation designs where parts of the robot will flip out and fold over and shift around to go from one form to another, because I guess one of the sort of aesthetics of the movie, the points of it is just to try to make it more convincing or realistic. So the vehicle and robot forms are more complicated than the traditional toy depiction, or cartoon rather, depictions of these characters. Now, despite all the moving parts of the toy, it's a fairly stable and solid figure, though I will say that there are a couple of points, joints rather, that are that feel a little loose to me. I don't know if it's a common quality control issue, or if it's just really my figure, or it's something that only affects a small sort of percentage of the figures out there, but I do find that the legs of the figure for my War for Cybertron Optimus Prime they feel a little loose. The hips in particular, and the knees, but it's not terribly loose, but it is something that I've noticed. It doesn't hinder articulation too much, but it is something that I have to sort of contend with when I do want to pose the figure. And it does tend to be a little back heavy, because there is a backpack sort of portion of the figure in humanoid robot form. So that's something else to consider as well when you're posing the figure. It is a little back heavy, so you do have to account for that when you are posing the figure. Now, one interesting point here is that in addition to the fists or the hands, which have basically what are called 5mm peg holes, which is kind of like a universal standard for Transformers toys. The vast majority of Transformers toys created in the past and in the present will have 5mm diameter peg holes. And the good thing about that sort of standard of dimensions for the peg holes in the hands or fists is that it allows you to use various 5mm sized weapon accessories with any Transformers figure that has the 5mm peg holes there. And I mentioned earlier that you can use the gun or rifle in various configurations, and I'll show you that right now. Let's see, here's the rifle. So here is the normal sort of grip or handle at the bottom that you could store in the hand of the character or the figure, the toy. But alternatively, with this side peg, you can put it on the forearms, which have these 5mm peg holes, and just plug it in there for an alternative sort of alternative way to have the weapon posed. It's a little difficult with these other parts in the way. Let's try this again. But there you go. So you can have it like on the forearm in a less conventional sort of pose, or even use the normal grip there and put it on the side as well. And I think there are other 5mm peg holes you could probably utilize. Like there's one up here. That's what it looks like. No, it's a little too big. But yeah, very interesting that you do have more than one option for posing the gun there. I'm not a big fan of the sort of spring-loaded gimmick, though. It's kind of, I feel, unnecessary. I also noticed that one side of the blaster here, the rifle, is hollow. It looks like half of a mold. It's something that I would say resembles a lot of the Super Deformed or SD Gundam model kits, where you have exposed hollow bits in some portions. Now the thing is with this toy, it's unnecessary to have that hollow component. It doesn't, if this was filled in and resembled this side as well, it wouldn't interfere with the storage form, and it wouldn't interfere with the gimmick. So it does feel like Hasbro kind of cheapened out on that part of the manufacturing of this toy, that they for some reason only gave this part of the rifle half of the sculpt, half of the mold basically. And it is, visually it detracts, in my opinion. It makes it look a little cheaper. Not that this is a high-end action figure by any means, but it does cheapen the appearance of the toy. But aside from that, it's a great looking toy in both vehicle and robot form. As you can see in robot form, it looks very much like the sort of iconic Optimus Prime design, with the broad, wide shoulders and upper torso, long legs with the blue lower portion, silver thighs. We have the silver portions here on the legs, like the smokestacks or exhaust ports or pipes rather. So yeah, even though it's a Cybertronian sort of alien form of Optimus Prime, not his Earth form, there's no mistaking it. When you look at this toy in its robot humanoid form, most people will recognize this as another iteration of Optimus Prime. Their articulation is great, with ball joints, a hinge, swivel joints, even ball joints for the ankles, which do allow a really nice range of posing. You can put the legs far apart with the feet, flat on the surface. And the ball joints on my figure, at least, are very tight. The toe portions are hinged, so you can even adjust them for varied posing. There is no waist articulation, but it's not a big deal. You can adjust in other ways. The shoulders have a lot of articulation for full rotation, hinged for moving up and down. Elbows have a good range of articulation as well. The fists have rotational articulation and can only go down because of transformation design, but it is an option if you want to use it. The head itself is on a ball joint at the neck with some good range of movement. And I mentioned earlier about another sort of design aspect in robot form that reminded me of the War Within Optimus Prime design. That's where basically how the wheels here are positioned at the sort of back of the shoulders. War Within Optimus Prime has the wheels within the shoulders themselves, but this, to me, kind of resembles that design point. So it's something that I thought I'd just point out for you guys to consider. But yeah, overall, it's a really great toy, a really great action figure. I haven't played War for Cybertron, but from the concept art and the screenshots I've seen of the game, the toy looks like a very good representation of the animation model, the computer animated model in the video game. It's not 100% accurate, but it's as good as we'll get for a $15 or $10 toy, I guess, depending where you're at this time. The transformation is great. The aesthetics, the design of the toy in both vehicle and robot form really appeal to me. I'm a big G1 or Generation 1 fan, and this really screams G1 aesthetics. But again, because of some of the mechanical detail and because of the complex transformation design, it also brings in an element of the live-action movie aesthetic into this toy, into this character design, I guess, which is something that I really enjoy. A lot of people don't like the more sort of robot-y, mechanical elements of the live-action movie Transformers, but I am a fan of that. I really do like the more complex visuals of the character models from the movie. And the great thing about this toy is that it's again really quite posable. You do again have to work around some issues, like the backpack portion does add some mass to the back of the figure, and because my figure has somewhat loose hip connections, I do have to sort of play around with it a bit to get it into a solid standing pose. But even so, as you can see, it doesn't take long for you to really just position it however you want, and there's a really great potential here for posing. So yeah, I definitely recommend this figure if you're a Transformers fan, especially if you're an Optimus Prime fan or a War for Cybertron video game fan. You're probably going to want this toy to add to your collection because it's a really great looking display piece that has a lot of potential for both play value, because it is a toy, and also display value because it has great articulation and has a great overall visual design to it. So that's my review of War for Cybertron Optimus Prime from the Transformers Generations toy line. I hope you guys enjoyed this review and got something out of it. I'll see you guys at the next video, which should be War for Cybertron Bumblebee. Thank you for watching.